It was a miracle to find this 900 square foot house with huge yard in 2006. It is my new home place and provides me the opportunity to live out the best of my rural heritage and reconcile that which was not so great. I have no television nor car, but I get around town on bicycle and by bus. I call myself an urban farmer, and I am an advocate for resilient living, sustainable agriculture, and locally grown food. I also own over 500 acres of land in Pocahontas County. 2/3 is in conventional row crop farming. 1/3 is being transitioned to organic practices. My great-grandparents, who came to Iowa in 1878, accumulated much land and wealth. And my own family seemed to value land ownership as much as anything else. However, although I wanted to be a farmer like Grandpa with his horses, or like Dad with his engineering degrees, farming was a man's world. The only place I saw in it for a woman was to be a farmer's wife. I was uncomfortable, and yet I chuckled when I read the caption under my photo in the high school yearbook. But even though I chuckled, I felt alienated. It was not until decades later that I learned the issues I faced were not mine alone. They were connected to Thomas Jefferson's pervasive agrarian model for democracy. It claimed that farming was a superior way of life and that men were to be the prime citizens. In retrospect, I appreciate how the threads of my life have come together. I love being in this great college town where one of its best assets is the Iowa State University Sustainable Agriculture Program. But I resent corporate control of the agricultural college and government. I am appalled by the mantras that American farmers need to feed the world and that bigger is better. I grieve what is happening to the environment. And I grieve the end of an era. In 1990, I began a documentary project called The Road I Grew Up On. In it, I interviewed several people, mostly from my parents' generation, who had lived in the area, and an attorney from Pocahontas. I was surprised by the variety of responses, yet what they told me generally reinforced my impressions about women's roles in farming.
I think many of the farm wives have helped their husbands on the farm in field work. And they perhaps will drive the tractor or drive the combine or haul grain to town, things of that nature. They work right along as a partner. I don't know of any ladies who operate farms by themselves without the husband, unless occasionally where a husband dies and the widow survives and she continues on with the help of some neighbors or with some of the sons. I have a lot of farm clients where the lady or the wife does all the bookwork and brings the books in for income tax purposes and is more knowledgeable of what their business consists of from a tax standpoint as the husband. I think they defer to their husbands on, if it comes to a dispute, when to sell the grain, when to harvest this, or when to market the hogs or the cattle. But I think they're very knowledgeable. I really do. I don't know if they could take over a farming operation because there's a lot of manual labor involved they perhaps don't want to participate in, but they're very knowledgeable.
I don't think it ever occurred to my father that he would do any housework. That was my mother's job. but I don't think he also recognized that she was doing field work. Gardening was field work. I don't think it ever occurred to my mother that she wasn't part of the management team, because I think they made their decisions pretty much regarding big decisions. I think they made them together. Dad made the decisions on hogs. My mother made the decision when he was going to butcher a hog because that was food. They bought a new car. They did that together. They bought machinery. My dad made that decision. But they sat down and talked about the financial aspects of buying a tractor. Other than that, I don't think there was a conflict or any abuse on either side.
All right, the threshing machine coming. When you had them coming to your home, a woman's work was very hard, because in the rural area, electricity just plain did not get there. Towns got it first. So you had your wood-cook stove, and you had to carry water. The thing I remember is you start carrying the water in right now, you start carrying the wood, the cobs. You had to get something baked for the lunch in the morning with those threshers. Then you got breakfast out of the way as quick as you could, because you had to get in whatever you were going to make for coffee. If it was cake, and get it in, get it out, get it baked, because you had several that you were feeding at noon, which meant several pies. You had to get the meat going. You had all of this. Then as soon as you've got that figured out, you've got to figure out what are you going to serve for lunch in that afternoon and probably that night for supper. So it was continuous all day long.
One of her brothers would run the horse.
Yeah, my youngest
Cultivate
brother
with the
always,
horses always, and the other one would cultivate with the tractor.
when the tractors come in, when we first had a tractor, well then the older of the two, he took the tractor and the younger one stayed with the horses. I was all those war years, you see, from the time we moved up here till...
You graduated in 45.
Yeah, until I graduated. That was wartime. Well, I learned how to run the tractor and help in the field and run the milk machine. See, my dad milked cows at that time, too. Just plain had to be a chore person and help her.
You say, how much is my mother involved in the actual decision-making process? She's involved in selling of her own grain. At 82, she'll pick up the phone and say, I want to sell X number of beans or X number of bushels of corn, and so they do, and they mail a check out to her, see? She also has a decision in how much fertilizer to put on that ground. She's involved in the storage of the grain, in the drying of the grain. She's not involved in any of the machinery work. See, my dad died in 1966 at the age of 57. My mother had just learned how to drive a car and got a driver's license at the age of 56. Now, she knew hardly nothing of the farm operation at that time. She knew that she had to sign her name when they were buying farms, but for the rest of the operation, she didn't know a zip about it. She often says that there were two people that helped her learn about agriculture. One was the attorney that Dad had for many years over there. The second man, believe it or not, was the man in the grain elevator. Now, Eldon guided her through some of those decisions because he knew that she had a tendency to not trust someone until she knew him very well. So he would just present her options and say, no, you just think about it. And then she learned to trust him. But you see, two critical people helped her into learning all of that. Now, this has acquired over 25, 26 years of learning. So,
What was she like before that?
oh, she took care of the housework, the raising of the kids, the garden, and the chickens.
Well, I was kind of the breadwinner and so forth. Mary Jane took care of the kids and getting them ready, and I just give her support.
Do you now, or have you ever called yourself a farmer? Are you a farmer?
Yes. I was happiest on the farm. When I was home, when I was growing up, I just never really thought I'd marry a farmer.
Oh, didn't you? Mm-hmm.
When I became a school teacher and so forth, but it always appealed to me. I always loved living on the farm because I loved to garden. Always had big gardens, and I was interested in, and I do all the bookkeeping. I still do all the bookkeeping. So it's been interesting being a farmer's wife.
When we were first married, the ASC office called and wanted me to go over there and work. And Joe wouldn't let me because he thought I should be home and be
Gosh,
a
I sure
homemaker.
made a mistake then, didn't I?
You did. So anyway, that took care of that. I never ever even thought about working after that. But then when Mick started school, I thought, oh, this is going to be just terrible. So I was just really bored, and that's when I worked in Fort Dodge. And, you know, not having started out working from the very beginning, I didn't feel that my family really was cooperating. You know, the husbands help do everything now, and they didn't then.
She just found out that year that I just wasn't gifted with these abilities to cook and wash and things like that. She's the computer operator.
The maid.
And
the cleaning lady.
Yeah, and the cleaning lady. And public ambassador.
I plan your Pioneer pig roast and all this good stuff for you.
And
are you enthusiastic? I mean, do you like that event?
Oh yeah, it's okay. It's a lot of work.
It is hard to tell if this is the best of times or the worst of times, the age of wisdom or the age of foolishness in agriculture. But for sure, I am impressed with the women I know who are involved in agriculture. I have high regard for their vision, dedication, leadership, energy, and expertise. And I must remember that it is only in developing nations with their emphasis on industrial farming, that women have been second-rate citizens in agriculture. There is much I can learn from women farmers of other ethnic backgrounds and from other cultures.